And, of course, Russia's war on Ukraine rages on. Power cuts have been scheduled in Kyiv after many households were left without electricity due to the Russian airstrikes of infrastructure. Joining me in the studio to talk all about Russia is our political commentator and Russian expert, Danny Armstrong. Danny, right, so, yeah, it seems that they are now striking power stations and things like that. Tell me about, what's going on. What's the thinking now from the Russian side? What do you know?
Well, as we've seen, the suicide drone attacks on civilian kind of settlements by Russia, those Iranian-supplied drones, there has been a little bit of an argument whether they have been supplied by Iran. The Kremlin vehemently denies it. Well, of course, the Kremlin vehemently denied that there would be an invasion, so take their word at your peril, and there will be a UN probe into those drone attacks. Now, they led to the deaths of around about a dozen people in places like Kiev as well. But now we're seeing Russian attacks on energy grids. Around about 1.5 million people will be without power. Of course, with winter coming up, that's going to be very, very serious. In that part of the world, winter is very harsh and very unforgiving. Now, the thing that is important to note is that these attacks are not on military targets. They're, again, targeting those civilian settlements, much like the drone attacks that we saw. It really is the Kremlin targeting the people on the ground and terrorizing civilians. But Volodymyr Zelensky said it will not stop a Ukrainian advance, which is what we're expecting now in Kherson, of course, one of the 4 annexed regions in Ukraine.
Now, isn't Putin struggling? Because I think, he'd lost about 50,000 troops or something, they were saying, and he's struggling to recruit more. At the moment, he's got a sort of Potemkin army of people who've never really fought at all, so he's desperately trying to get more and more people to fight in the war, and a lot of them are saying they don't want to do it.
That's very true. Of course, we're seeing in Ukraine a kind of terrorising of the public and the Ukrainian people. On the flip side of that, we've got in Russia mobilization, which is another tool to kind of keep people under the rule of an iron fist, as it were, for the regime. Putin said last weekend that mobilization will go on for another 2 weeks or so. Russia said that there has been 200,000 reservists called up. That's just 100,000 short of the initial target of 300,000. People say the Kremlin says that just reservists and people with combat experience are being called up. That's not the case. I've been talking to people on the ground. A friend texted me, he says, I'm tired of running. I said, of who? He says, of the recruitment officers.
Really?
I says, are they coming for you specifically? He says, sooner or later they're going to come for everybody. Now that's what people are being taken back to.
Do it though, so it's not going to be a very good army. I mean, it's like doing a job you don't want to do. You're not going to do it very well. In fact, you'll abandon it as quickly as you can.
Well, that's the situation we've got on the ground now in Russia. We've got people who are against the war, who are being given their draft summons and having army recruiters come to their front door, knock on the door, and for many that will be the very last knock of the door that they'll hear. So we have that tool of terror that is kind of transported people back to kind of Soviet times when people really were scared of being picked off the streets. That's what's happening now on the ground in Russia.